Hello, hello, dear Starshines. Welcome to another edition of Lunchtime Chats. For those of you who are new, my name is Christina, and I am a consciousness acceleration expert. And we are here to talk about those topics and issues that are significant for our starseeds, way showers, new paradigm visionaries. We have capacities, we have abilities that are not available or embraced by our larger human family. And therefore, we have a very unique perspective to what and how we experience this crazy, beautiful, miraculous transitioning world. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, dear Sister Bev. Hello, Felicia. Hello, Carol. Good to see you guys. Thank you for being here. I am in beautiful Durango. This is actually a really, really cool place. The first time I've been here, though I've lived in Colorado for many years. So I'm on my way further south to Arizona. It's so gorgeous out. I really would love to have done this chat outside, but alas, the wind. The wind is not our friend when you have a device with a microphone, unfortunately. So, but we have a few things to talk about today. Thank you so much for those of you who sent in messages. There's a few of them. They're really good. And I think that, we really are coming to a time where, we're discovering, we are discovering what the path looks like. We're discovering how to walk it in an authentic way. What is the life that actually is worthwhile getting up for? What is it really worth putting our life force energy into? I think many of us are realizing what we thought we wanted. It is not necessarily hitting the spot. And I got a call from a dear sister, Starshine, and her husband yesterday. Her husband listened to this podcast on NPR about it was the Fresh Air podcast. So I'll just do a plug for it for you guys. The conversation was interesting. It was really a man who's in his 60s who that has been going to silent retreats at a Benedictine Monastery in Big Sur. Now, for those of you who don't know, Big Sur is a massive vortex and therefore has a lot of advanced spiritual facilities there. And of course, this monastery is one of them. It's a Benedictine owned by the Catholic Church, but they specifically do outreach for the masses. They are the living edict of something that I guess the Pope said during the founding or the launching of the Vatican II, is that all religions, all traditions, if they carry truth, they are not strangers to us. So it is a living, breathing manifestation of that statement. So I appreciated the conversation. I think that you guys might appreciate the conversation as well, because this really speaks to the other point that's being made here in this message sent to me by dear sister Emmeline. You guys probably are familiar with that name, for those of you who are in the academy and do activations and stuff like that. And this all weaves together. I'm just deciding in this moment how to weave this all together, because this actually goes so deep. All right. So those of us who are truly activated and encoded with the task as a way shower, with the purpose, the life purpose of living true to oneself, okay, the foundation principles that these monks live are actually something that we live every day. It's in our value system, okay? It's in us, it's ingrained in us, but we are not monastic. We may have had many lifetimes as one in the monastic lifestyle, and I'm talking about being a monk or a nun. I'm an initiate of some sort into a mystery school religious establishment, okay? And there are transformative techniques and transmissions and practices that we learn in those lifetimes that all kind of culminate now with us, with you and I, because we're visionaries, because we have this other capacity. And oh shoot, I didn't mean to click on that. I should not be talking with the phone in my hand. I have the phone in my hand because I want to be ready to read it, but it's too distracting. Anyway, I digress. So, for those of us who are encoded and activated, and our encodements are growing within us like a rich garden, nourishing our spirit, and therefore we are able to help nourish others. We have these values, these foundation principles as a baseline to our life. And if we're not actually living that, we are striving to figure out a way to live that. Okay. So this is why I think this conversation might be interesting to you guys, because this gentleman is talking about, he wrote a book about fire, losing everything he has, and being there while his whole life is burning down, which is very timely because he's from LA, right? And it's before it was at the Santa Barbara fires that he was talking about, who I also have connections with. I have people that are in my life or have been in my life that are deeply connected to that. So it's a passage of fire. But he's also talking about how these principles that he learned through silence and working with these monks have helped him wake up to himself in another way. But in their frame up in that conversation, I couldn't help but notice that the frame up of that entire conversation was, the work of these monks have awakened me to these things, and they're very special things. And that it's also things that perhaps the way the interviewer was holding it, was holding it as in, this isn't normal, and how could you possibly transform like this? It's kind of like someone who's a young soul interviewing an old soul on, why is this wise? Why is this a thing, right? But to those of us who are encoded and who are activated, it's like, this is a very of course kind of thing. And one of the big taglines that came out of that, or in the beginning of that, I was like, of course, yes, that's the truth. But it was put in such a poetic way. I repeated it on my Instagram, on my personal Instagram, and on the Rise of the Multidimensional Human group. And that is this idea of, what is it to really be in luxury? What is it to really be privileged? We have this soundbite idea in the 4D field in these narratives, but that's nowhere near what's real. And he goes on to say, real, true luxury is not in what you have, it's in what you don't need. And man, that just like landed so deeply. I was like, yes, that's the life I'm living. I'd never put it in words like that, but there it is. Because one of the big complaints that I've had, me, like coming from me to just, to myself, I guess, is that it takes a lot of time, energy, and money and effort to have things, right? It's like, it's a major commitment. It kind of like weighs you down. It obligates you to certain kinds of things and all this stuff. And you guys would be surprised how difficult it is not to accumulate things. For example, I'm blessed to have so many beautiful starshines in my world. And when we're together, they all want to give me something. They want to give me a stone. They want to give me this. They want to give me that. It's like, no, please don't give me anything. And it doesn't register. After a while it'll register if you see me, more than, every other year or whatever. But it's difficult for it to register that giving me things is not a helpful thing for me, right? Giving me things just means that's one more thing to add into this already overpacked bag, and it's such it's like a schism that happens inside a person's brain, because it's difficult to fathom how their generous, minded, heart-centered gift is something that's actually not helpful, right? And it's really, I've learned to just gracefully decline. Sometimes people won't let me decline, which I go on to say, well, I will go on to gift this to someone else, right? So I will let you force me to take it, but do know I'm not going to be keeping it. It's going to be passing on to someone else that might benefit, and it's interesting that the path of freedom and sovereignty leads to those moments like that. The caretaking side would be like, oh yes, thank you, that's so nice, and la la la, let them get the dopamine hit and let them feel received and, do all that. But, I only can do that so much. There's only so many people I see in a month where I can give things away to, right? So it gets to be a point where it becomes part of a bit of a problem. I'm not saying that I don't appreciate people's gifts. I do. I absolutely love the intention, the heart-centeredness, that means a lot, right? That means a lot to me. But the actual accumulation of things over time turns into a thing, right? And I realized that this really is part of humanity's issue with how they get manipulated in the narrative about climate change in relationship to nature. Because nature is always moving. Nature is always moving. It's always shifting. Fires happen all the time. Floods happen all the time. Tsunamis. I mean, if you look at the countries in the East that deal with regular natural disasters, India is a great example. They have tsunami season. Every year, flooding occurs, things get destroyed, and they know that. So therefore, people naturally and wisely have a certain relationship to that kind of change to come into this world. And what we see happening with the humans of the West is that we really have this baseline. Not that we want that baseline, because many of us know it's not the truth, but don't know how to imagine something beyond that. And this is the key point here, figuring out how to imagine something beyond what we're given in the program, that everything is temporary. How do we live in such a way where we work with nature? How do we live in such a way? How do we create our systems, our structures that are in right relationship to nature so we can embrace the change? Climate change, we shame all the humans and tell them they're a cancer in the world because look what they've done. But really, nature is just being nature. We are the ones that need to change our systems, not nature. And that's why this narrative with the global warming is so out of whack. It's so disconnected to the truth that we are infinitely and deeply connected with nature no matter what we do. And it's up to us to come in right relationship with nature, not the other way around. So instead, there's this program that we have carbon footprints and we eat and therefore we do this. We have garbage and therefore that happens and all this stuff. It's like, no, we are living in a place where we belong, and it's up to us to be in right relationship with that. It's up to us to be the custodians of that. And that is the simplest way through that part. But this ingrained assumption that we have something to be ashamed of simply because we were born and we are alive is something that we are waking up out of as a collective. These fires in LA are a great example. The flooding in North Carolina, a great example, right? These are all showing us that there is a different way of living that's being called for, right? I don't care if you think that it's arson or if it's weather control done on purpose or not, that doesn't matter. The fact is that if we live our life in a free flow state where change is the embraced default, okay, then these kinds of tragedies and disasters will be landing differently for us. They will be taking us to a different place than what's being reflected back to us by the media. Okay. Now, and I make a point not to watch media, but man, I'm telling you, it finds us everywhere we go. It finds us everywhere we go. And this is something to really embrace. Okay. And put into perspective again. We are the ones that have to put in perspective, not the other way around. This conversation with this gentleman really brought up so many realizations for me on, where the natural default programs of human degradation exist. Okay. For example, when we belong to mystery schools, when we belong to ashrams with gurus that have fallen, when we belong to even cults, when we, a cult is a big umbrella. I know it doesn't necessarily mean a lot unless you have your own personal experience with what's called a cult. But what happens is that there is a major investment of life force energy and belief and support, and there's something that's gotten out of it, spiritually maybe, and then something changes. The guru falls, the cult leader this, or a person wakes up and realizing that the way they're living is actually completely abusive and traumatizing, or stuff like this, and it creates this crisis of faith. And this crisis of faith is something that is a real experience that I believe in this perspective that I'm having right now is meant to wake us up out of a program, out of something that's false. Okay. When I was a teenager, I was like, I was 18, 19 years old. I started, I really wanted to learn yoga. And of course, the person that gets put on my path is straight up out of an ashram, has been there for 20 years, something like this, a long time, almost 20 years. No, I think it was more than 20 years. Anyway, and she starts this yoga center. And of course, I gravitate towards that, and we learn. Great teacher, all these things. And eventually, as I get deeper involved, because I eventually did teacher training there, I find out that the guru of that center was a really popular, well-known center, even to this day, in New England, that the guru fell. And the guru fell because, there was, it was revealed that he was having sexual relations with some of the participants, some of the residents there. And there were different kinds of residents. They were monastic residents, and then there were just people there to discover themselves in this scenario, right? Like my friend, she was there for 20 years. I think it was more than 20 years, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm tuning into her energy. She's a very exacting, particular kind of person. So that's why I'm hanging on to that. I'm plugging. All right. And what I learned as a teenager, what I saw was there were people that were called renunciates. They were the ones that lived a monastic lifestyle. So they gave up all of their belongings. They gave up all of their money. They gave up all of their real estate, investment portfolios, whatever, and gave it over to the ashram. And in exchange, were given a space was there for them to have their monastic lifestyle. Okay. So when the guru fell, it created a crisis of faith. And this is so with a lot of monastics, including the ones in the Catholic and Christian and Hindu. I mean, there's so many levels of monastic lifestyles, some well-known, some not well-known. When I was a child, the only monastic life that I knew about was nuns and monks and priests and stuff like this. And this is why I can speak to it in this way, because this is something I really I wanted to be, really, when I was young. I wanted to be a nun. I know it's so stupid. I mean, at the time, that was the only thing I knew that qualified of what I wanted for my life, right? And that was, of course, I was 11, 12 years old. I didn't know any better. Anyway, so when the establishment when the establishment and structure that is holding the circumstances for you to unfold your devotion, your devotional life, has a falter, then this crisis of faith happens. And it's very common for the monastic, the person that was in that lifestyle, to leave the faith, to leave the tradition. Okay. I know monks and nuns of different Buddhist traditions that have left. I've known, especially nuns in the Catholic that have left. There was a lot of leaving going on once the establishment displayed something that was less than divine in their mind. But because of this default program that we have about being small, about being less than a divine being in a biosuit, I feel like that gets activated, and therefore we leave, we leave the monastic. Now, there is also in this dynamic following the voice of your soul. So I don't want to act like, you weren't following the voice of your soul because you left. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just talking about this default program, how it activates us and drives us away from something that we have fully, I would say, we're in alignment with before. Okay. And there's this massive thing unfolding. There's a huge revolution with human consciousness that we are at the foot of. And I feel like the monastic lifestyles of all the traditions around the world are coming to this crisis point where, how do they alchemize their situation, and who are they to do the alchemizing of the situation? Okay. Now, this is hard to get to because of this default idea that we're less than for some reason. And I know default in Christianity, you're born a sinner, so therefore you're not divine. I get that. But there are beings that see past that. St. Francis of Assisi, for example, saw past that, right? He was able to wake up that divinity was in everything. There was nothing that was not in the divine symphony of life, including him. Okay. So there are ways where the space being held and the transformative practices being done serve a much larger collective, a much larger idea. And that's this waking up that I'm talking about, where you dedicating yourself and needing to have the structure to be all, the divine that you need it to be, versus recognizing that you, in your authenticity, in your divinity, are actually the one who creates the alchemy of that structure. You see what I mean? It's the other way around. It's like that that beautiful Sufi quote, and I've posted it so many times. I just love it. There are those that seek beautiful places, and there are those who make places beautiful. Okay. This is at the crux of what I'm talking about. When we, multidimensional starseeds, when we are in recognition of the outside world and see, embrace our purpose of creating beauty, making beauty in whatever is around us, instead of functioning of this place from this place of, oh, all this is fucked up, so therefore dot dot dot, right? Therefore I'm out of here, therefore this is not my home, therefore this is my last lifetime, therefore I'm never doing this again, right? You see that this program goes so deep, we don't recognize the mind fuck. Okay, we are divine beings in a biosuit. End of beginning and end of story. So you and me have a responsibility now. How do we express that? How do we show up in that? Does the place really need to already be beautiful for you to bring beauty? You see what I mean? Okay. Now I'm going to go. Newly announced high-speed rail. Woo, yeah. And of course, conspiracy theories are coming out about, well, everything, right? The big change that's happening, and what different forces that be are facilitating it. All right, I'm going to go through your comments, Felicia, and then I'm going to go on to the next piece that that I have the message for, that actually kind of sparked this whole thing. All right, so I don't squint here. All right, speaking of gifting, we are naturally drawn to gifting, and those in service are gifting energy, are especially vulnerable to feeling out of step with others, with gifts are invisible. And until you draw to you humans that can absorb and utilize the benefits of your gifts, we actually never know the potential of the magic and gifted energy. In the gifted, the life of it is the surprise of being translated into wondrous interpretations. In this, the gifter grows in capacities further unrealized. Aha, there you go. There you go. Thank you, Felicia, for chiming in on that. You guys, this is really a big piece. A question that we've been visiting a lot in the academy is, purpose, right? And there are people who are really, really, well, everybody's dedicated. If you're in our, if you last in our academy, you're definitely dedicated. But I'm going to say that there are these back and forths that happen about service, path of service, and how do I help others, this kind of thing. And speaking to this point of, by us transforming ourselves and how we be and how we show up in the world, being more authentically in alignment with our own divinity, we change the frequencies in the collective. We add additional weavings of, I'm going to say, purity in the collective field. We emanate that frequency. And then because we do it en masse, because we do it as a group, because we relate on this level as a group, that exponentially builds the wave of shifting. So us focusing on our inner journey and liberating ourselves from what's called the false matrix, liberating ourselves and stepping into that interdimensional sovereignty, we are shifting this world in massive, massive ways, but it's hard to embrace that because we want to see the external reflection, right? It takes time because we do eventually see the external reflection and the changing of our relationships and the changings of the quality of how we wake up in the morning and experience our day, and in experiencing ourselves so differently, in liberating things that have burdened us or have been a problem for us for decades. All of this shifts magically by changing the inner game. And of course, there's the physicality. We heal from things that have been perhaps I don't want to use the word plaguing, but visiting plaguing us. Sometimes it feels like a plague until you figure the solution out. It's a plague. Let's say it like that. It feels like a plague. Right. All right. Now, and I want to be sure to incorporate our younger generations. I've spent this past several weeks in the northern areas of Colorado, hanging out with my kids who are adults, and I learned so much about the younger perspective and activated humans, and what is the habits or trends or whatever you want to point that out to, right? And we have some very interesting conversations because the difference of attitudes and perspectives between the generations are pretty significant, right? And one of the beefs I have is how they there's an attitude and a language against what they call boomers, right? And I can tell there's certain things in some of their friends' attitudes that they don't like boomers, and kind of like they're accusing me of being a boomer. And first of all, it's like, I have to correct this. It's like, number one, I am not a boomer. Number two, why does this bother you so much? Why is this such a negative thing? And there's this blame that we all, like their life, their circumstances, all this stuff is all messed up, and it's because of the boomers, right? That's the generational sentiment that I'm picking up on. And then there's me. I guess I'm considered Generation X. And then there's millennials, Gen Zs, Omegas. I don't know. I can't remember the whole thing. the part that was relevant to us sitting in the room is the part that really landed for me. And I said to them, it's like, listen, you guys don't understand what you're saying. And they don't understand how disrespectful and rude it comes off. Not that they're trying to be disrespectful and rude. They're trying to express a feeling. They're trying to express a truth. That's right on. But this overarching attitude towards their elders that's really what I was pointing out to them. And that there's not that they're responsible to change the voice of a generation. I was just sharing it with them for a perspective to realize that a lot of these programs still impact them. And that was the whole point of that part of the conversation. Was they were saying to me that they, as Gen Zers, they see through the baloney. They see through the programs. There's a lot of things that, of course, they already know is conspiracy or a distraction to what's really important and stuff like this. And they're pointing out things like the disclosure movement and the stuff going on in the different narratives in the media, and how and the reason why so many of the Kamala people really believed were completely T-boned by the whole election and all that stuff. T-boned is when you get like swiped out of nowhere. And that, they saw through all this stuff and that they feel like they are above a lot of this programming. But I'm here to tell you, and this is something that Richard Hoagland said many years ago, and I'm going to repeat it because this is a gem to keep all of us on our toes, to keep all of us awake and questioning. And that's the thing. We need to keep questioning no matter what. And this is what he says. He says, in regards to conspiracy theories and disclosure movements and the operations of the government and the operations of indoctrination and all this stuff, he says, the lie is different at every level. The lie is different at every level. And this is the golden statement out of all that stuff that we were watching back then in the 90s. I mean, you guys remember. And this is, whoops, maybe you guys don't remember. Some of us remember because we've been looking into alternative ideas and media for a long time. The lie is different in every level. And that's what I feel like that's what waking up to the 4D is like, is realizing the programming that affects each of our generations is different. It's angled and speaking directly to a wound or a lie that we're all embracing. Okay, so Gen Z sees through a lot of stuff, but they have their own baseline lie, right? They have their own baseline distortion. At the core of it all is this piece that I'm talking about, being divine beings in a biosuit, and then how it gets twisted into us having to acquiesce to an outside force in order to be worthy of our divinity, right? What? Right? To an awakened multidimensional. When you see that, you wake up out of it and you're like, wow, done. I'm done with that. I can see that the actions and attitudes and thoughts I was taking that was coming out of that lie. I'm done. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to choose something different now. Okay. I'm choosing something different. And that's the key. Okay. I'll get to that comment after this. I want to get to this share. All right. So for those of you who are on Instagram, yeah, wait a minute. Sorry. I weave all this stuff together and there's certain points that I have to get to for it all to come together. Oh, in this conversation I was having with them, what they told me, they said that being spiritual is like a hip thing to be now, right? It's hip, it's cool to be perceived or thought of as a spiritual person. And I was just, when they told me that, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. This really absolutely helps me feel so much better, because I see so many young people who are novices acting like they're masters, so impressed with themselves when really, they're novice. And yes, it's great that they're asking questions. Yes, it's great that they have these capacities. And because of the Starseed encodements and all this stuff, they have really advanced levels available to them. But that just means that the lie is different at another level for them, right? It doesn't mean that they are as advanced as they think they are. And this is, I see like crazy levels of narcissism in the spiritual movement that people are really into, and then people find out that they're totally false, and then, you know, things blow up in their face and all that stuff. You know, I mean, I've been accused of being totally false, but it's just like, you know what? I'm just real. I'm not trying to be cool. Yes, I put some mascara on before I do a chat, but that's because I'm blonde. And I don't know if you guys remember growing up in the 70s, that, you know, it's kind of a thing when you have blonde hair and blue eyes, you know, you look like a demon in all the photographs, unless you put things on your eyes to change that. Anyway, I make myself laugh. But, you know, I just do what I do. You know, I do what I do. I have this amazing vision that I completely believe in, and I attract people who believe in it too, and are amazing in what they do. Right. So I'm not trying to prove anything or be an influencer or any of that. I just do me. But this spiritual narcissism, I can see why it's so prevalent now in the younger generations, because it's hip, it's cool to appear spiritual. My eldest daughter told me that there's people out there that just because they smoke pot, that means that they're spiritual. I've never heard that thought before, but she said that's a real thing in her generation. So I was really taken back by that. So, and the reason why I'm saying all these things is because the younger generations, like I said, the lie is different at their level than what was for us, and they have different pitfalls that they have to look out for, right? And a lot of things are taken out of context, and they use that to fuel on why the older generations are out of step, or why certain thought forms are a lie, or, you know, something like this, right? Sounds very similar to what I'm talking about and what I'm saying. The difference is that, well, in some instances, I imagine there's not much difference at all, right? Because it's just perspective. But in other ways, the difference is that there's a much deeper value and deeper perspective. Okay. So the truth, the sacred, which is also rooted in the word secret, the mystical arts, the esoteric studies are secret, not because they're buried and only for the initiates. They are secret because only the one with the eyes to see can see the truth that's being spoken. So like with these one-liners, like, there are those that seek beautiful places, and there are those that make places beautiful. There are lots of layers that can speak to. Okay. Same thing with the luxury piece, right? Luxury isn't in what you have, it's in what you don't need. And speaking to freedom is, you know, but not everybody will hear that in that statement. Okay. So in the younger Starseed conversations, there's a lot of talk about Starseed, the title. Those that embrace that title are narcissists. They are inundated in the I am special program, and they act like they're better than everybody else. Kind of like that verbiage between magical folk and muggles, right? Similar kind of sentiment. There's also a lot of talk about the false light. We're talking about the light that happens after you die. Now, there are some very, very deep teachings about that, and it's all kind of like reduced to a reel or a sound clip, and I can see why there is such a hype about that. I mean, and it can be a real thing. But what I've realized, you know, I had a near-death experience in 2006, is that we know the space between death and life and death more than we know our own face in the mirror. So there is a depth of our being that is available in that space, in that moment, that is not necessarily prevalent in our here and now awareness in a biosuit. Okay. And I've talked about this many times. So there's lots of pieces here, and you guys are each going to hear your own thing in the statement. So this is, let's see, what was her name? I think she's considered a spiritual leader. Let's see. She's young. Okay, she has a made up name. That's also a big thing in the Starseed world, is to make up some kind of name for yourself. Maybe it's an initiated name. Sometimes it's a name that speaks your truth. There's this one woman who was actually my age. I met her in dark room. She kept changing her name and I never knew what to call her. And I said that to her. I'm like, I don't even know what to call you. And it's confusing. And she said, I just know the core seed syllable in my name has awe in it. And as soon as she said that, that totally registered for me, because my youngest daughter has a name that's mispronounced all the time. And it bugs her that it's not said, because she knows the awe is at the core of the essence of her name. So she came up with her own name, but that was simply so she can be addressed with the awe syllable, right? So she calls herself Autumn, even though that's not actually her given name. But anyway, so when she said that to me, that really registered for me. And I imagine that's what some of these youth are doing. But I also think that many of these guys are actors in a play. They're playing a role and they're really trying to create a persona. And is it true or not? I don't know. There's a young lady, Indigo Angel, right? There's people in our academy. We tap in sometimes. We look at them and check in with other people, and it's really it's a trendy thing for the youth to change their name. I've never embraced that myself. Never felt right, but there are those that do that, and I think it's to hold a certain frequency for themselves. And when you hold a certain frequency for yourself, it encourages you or reminds you to step into it, how to step into it, who you are in that role, that kind of thing. But it also turns into a false identity if one is not highly committed to the truth and discovering the truth. And the fact is that we have our lenses. There is no ultimate truth because there's a lens, right? We have a resonance, and then our lenses. Those are the some of the two things that we have to work with to learn how to work our truth compass inside, the truth compass of our spirit, which I've talked about many times in the past. The truth compass is all we have in this world. We're blinded in this world. We're blinded by the 4D field, but we're also blinded by the the programs that are told to us about who we are. So this truth compass is something that's elusive until we figure out how to follow it. And then once we figure out how to follow it, now you're cooking with something, right? You're really you have the essential tool to navigating this world and transcending, decoding, so to speak, the matrix, the false matrix. Okay, so this is one of the things she says. This is Sia. Oh, wait a minute. I clicked on that so I can see it's Sia Lanu Estrella. That is the handle. I don't know if this is her actual name. Cute young lady though. Anyway, she looks very bohemian. Anyway, goes on to say, false light narratives about starseeds. It's hard to witness the amount of false light narratives being pushed. Yes, I think we can. Yes, that's a thing. Why are they so effective? Because they operate on the existing lower streams of consciousness. Okay. So it's important to be discerning. Yes, it most certainly is. One of the messages about starseeds, it positions starseeds as different and special with a higher purpose. The truth is, we are all starseeds. We all have a higher purpose, something wonderful and unique to share with the world. Starseeds are not exclusively multidimensional beings. We all are. Now, that's the sentence that I really need to pick apart. Starseeds do not have different energetic operating systems. Not true. We all do. That's why as we awaken and activate our gifts, we upgrade our bodies. That's totally true. A few years ago, I shared a reel with 5 signs you're a starseed, and guess what? Pretty much everyone who watched it identified. Yep, that's because everybody who's watching it follows your channel and therefore identifies as a starseed. Sorry, just pointing that out. Why? Because we're all starseeds, even those who feel a deep connection to the earth. Because even the very first incarnation on earth were star-seeded from the stars. The starseed phrase is only helpful at getting us to think beyond the 3D experience. Okay, yeah. But the term was never meant to be used to create hierarchy or exclusivity. Yes, I agree. Sadly, many are using it to generate income through a false light frequency. Now, interesting comment. They are positioning starseeds as special cohorts on Earth because that feeds on ego. Lies different every level, right? There are also those who talk about the 144,000 light workers bringing the change. Again, the truth is there are millions in that capacity. Completely agree. When we pause to feel into these narratives, we might feel repulsed or ill because the frequency is so corrupt. I think there's other reasons why we feel repulsed and ill, but okay. Please be discerning. True remembering does not require hierarchy or exclusivity. The remembering is about unity. It's about remembering you are all embodied, as is every other being. And we are all finding our way back to the truth and wholeness of our divine love essence. Woohoo! I love it. So, yes, we're all seeded from the stars. Yes, we all come with special gifts, with something special to give to the world. We are all multidimensional beings. And yes, we are breaking the distortions of the false matrix. Okay, so I was just asked to give my take on that, right? Right, so that's the reaction thing. Here's the thing. This is true. Labels are used just like being spiritual makes you better than. It makes you cool, right? That is all true because the lie is different at every level. People who self-select them as star seeds, when I was younger, I identified with it because it was the only thing that can really touch on why I thought and saw things so differently than everybody around me. It was kind of like touching on giving me some sort of qualification of understanding what star seeds, about being a black sheep. Right? You guys feel like, are you a black sheep in your family, or were? We're getting older now, so maybe there's not so much family left, but still. Anyway, so here's the thing about encodements and having different energetic operating systems. This is the part that I really have to speak to about that. So we do, as you advance in your consciousness, as in the way you be is more and more an authentic expression of who you are, your energy system absolutely does change. And this gives rise to the experience, to the reality of chakra removal. Now, I know I've talked about this before. It creates so much argument in the light worker world, and it's because everybody thinks they know. And of course, right? This is right. But if I haven't experienced it myself, I wouldn't be talking about it. And what I've experienced myself are people, are beings that don't have the 7 chakra model in their system. How do I know? Because I work with energy. I feel energy. And I have a particular way of practicing where I'm not projecting onto what I'm tracking. I'm in that empty state, in the open state, and I watch things come to me. And because of that, I can see things that go beyond my ideas of how things are. That is a skill that has to be learned. That is the skill that you learn in silence, which is not something most young people have. Some do, some don't, most don't. Why? Because we're plugged into this world. If you're a youth that grew up in nature and spend most of your time in nature, a majority of your time in nature, yes, you are going to know what silence is. You are going to know what being the witness to things are and the value of it. But if you grew up in the Western world with this and all the other technologies around us, you don't have silence. You don't have quiet yet. Not yet. It's something that we have to retrain our system to have. So a busy nervous system, a lot of trauma, a lot of stress, all those things. It takes a while to learn how to live in this matrix reality to maintain a biosuit that doesn't have all those things, right? Maybe you guys agree. Those of us who've walked in the world, I really believe that, and I tell my kids this too. I'm like, this is the time to experiment and learn all that you can, make as many mistakes as possible, because really life doesn't begin until 40. Hate to break it to you. Life really does not begin till you're 40, because it's not till you're 40 does it all come together and you truly understand how to use your power, how to use your focus, how to use your bandwidth, right? That's assuming you're having, you're growing emotionally and mentally and spiritually throughout your life up until that time, right? So this different energy. The elders that I've worked with in from South and Central America, specifically the jungle shaman and the Kero, the visionaries of the mountains, they had a vision, they had a dream, they still do, and that they're actuating it. And one of the main reasons why their ancestors left main regular society to go live isolated way up high in very rough conditions, high in altitude. I'm talking about 16,000, 18,000 feet, like really high up in altitude. They left humanity was to preserve the light codes of what it is to be an awakened human. Okay. So back in the day, and I've talked about this again too, about, the priest kings, the sorcerers, the true sorcerers, the masters of Dreamtime, the masters of the unseen realm, were the ruling class in this planet, on this planet. Okay. This is why, all the stories and imageries we have about the Mayans and their ceremonies, right? And the pyramids, the Inca, the Aztec. I mean, yes, there are things that go into human sacrifice and all that stuff. Some of it's true, not all of it. There are these highly advanced ceremonial magic narratives performed by the leaders of the society, right? You need to be a highly advanced being in order to handle that kind of energy. Priest kings, sorcerers, they were the ones in charge. And then there was a turning of the world where the priest kings, the sorcerers, had to go underground. They still are. They're arising. Slowly but surely, they're arising. Not all of them are for the liberation of humanity. Just know, not all of them are embracing of the unification, liberation process of humanity, but they're there, but they're still there. They preserved, they knew the conquistadors were coming. The priest kings, the visionaries, the sorcerers of the Incan Empire, they knew that they were coming and that the turning of the worlds was approaching. And they took it upon themselves to devise a plan to preserve the light codes, the awakened blueprint of the human light body, to be passed on, to reawaken the world when the next Pachacuti comes, when the next turning of the worlds come. So they fled. They left the Incan Empire long before the conquistadors got there and decimated the society. And they decimated mostly through disease, but also through battles and conversions and stuff like that. When I say conversion, I'm talking about converting the people to Christianity, or into slavery, whatever. There were different versions depending on, where you were in the region. So it all depended on the queen or king that was in charge at the time. And what the story is in coming out is, when the 80s came, there are visionaries, there are true sorcerers. I'm talking about, guys, there are sorcerers on this planet that don't date, that don't age. They don't ever need to have what one would call money. They don't need anything but the life force of this world to bring about the circumstances that they need in the moment that they need it. Absolutely amazing human beings. But this potential was not unique. And this is the big message. The potential was not unique to them. It's just they were the ones that maintained these light bodies to to be the expression of their divinity. This coming is about the awakening en masse, the awakening of humanity. It's talking about all of us waking up to this, let's call it a shamanic paradigm. So it was their vision to preserve these codes so they can pass it on to the awakening generations when it came time. And they started preparing, because it took so long to prepare one's energy to receive this transmission. They started 100 years before these times came. They started coming down off the mountain, in the late early 1900s. So because it took 20 years to prepare an initiate to receive a transmission. It took 20 years for each of the transmissions, and there were several of them. There weren't just one. But the times have accelerated to such a point where the transmissions can now be given within a few months, right? The transmissions could be given, the time between the readiness for these transmissions were shorter. And that's because more and more people were being born with these encodements already activated. Back in the early 2000s, my guidance was telling me it was 20% of humanity were encoded, but only 20% of those were awakened, right? And that as we go further into this time, this time and space that we're in, there's going to be more and more encoded and awakened encoded beings. And now it's like 80% of humans born today are awakened and encoded. But the reason why these transmissions needed to be released beforehand was so the path would be laid. Okay, so the path would be already set for these next generations to retake this reality for, I want to say, our own divine nature. So we can step back into being the true caretakers of this reality that we're meant to be. So histories, many millions of years ago, to have a biosuit like this was a divine gift. And it was something that was a cherished and significant experience for a being to have. Fast forward to now, to this idea that we're born a sinner and we are a plague on the earth and we do all these terrible things and blah, 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 right? Juxtapose that. Totally different. But yet it's our light body that organizes these bodies in order for us to have this experience. So people who resonate with the idea of starseeds, with way showers, new paradigm visionaries, you are encoded and you're either awakened in your encodements or in the process of awakening in your encodements. And therefore, we are here to be a part of the change of this planet. That's not to say all these other people are just NPCs. You're an NPC until you wake up to yourself. Then you are waking up to your own divinity. But until you wake up to yourself, unfortunately, you're an NPC. And it's awful to say that, but this is true, because people are living out their programs and who they think they are more than their truth. And that's what I think she's trying to describe in this post, that it's hard to watch. Yes, it's hard to watch the sacred getting trivialized and made a mockery of, right? It's hard to watch a young man dressed in indigenous regalia pouring medicine when he himself has not woken up to who he really is. Because if he did, he would never put on that regalia. He would never position himself as a spiritual authority, right? Because, he would never need to do that, because he would just be. You wouldn't need all these things. You would just be. So there's so much I feel like she's trying to touch in that awareness, in that thing. But there's, we're learning on how to navigate, and then the embracing between the generations, the connection between the generations is so, so important. That's really what I'm getting at here. It's so, so important. We need to make sure we understand and appreciate that those who have come before us were in different circumstances than we are. And they absolutely are doing the best that they could have possibly done with those circumstances. And there are great gifts to be brought forward from that for us to build upon, you and I to build upon. And then same thing goes for us. And then what we pass on, what our legacy is for the next generation to build upon. And our legacy isn't Christina Schwind, ... No, it is a beautiful tree that maybe I planted 50 years ago, right? It is a light body structure in the energy field that fosters the growth of so many. It's not my ego driver who I am. It's what I've dedicated my passion and purpose towards while I was here. It's the beauty that I made. You see what I mean? That's the legacy. And that's your legacy as well. All right. Ooh, okay. I was a little late, went a little over. There we go. I have one more comment to read, and then I will go ahead and close up. For those of you who are down with growing your light body and activating these codes, because activating these codes has a lot to do with your relationship to nature and relationship with self. It's not just receiving them. You have to actively work it. It's like, consider it like a garden. This light body is like a garden. We continue to caretake, to weed out, to harvest, to replant. This is something that takes a lifetime to continue to cultivate, right? So if that is something that's really interesting for you and you feel like you're ready to step out and connect with others in a similar resonance with similar value system, I encourage you guys to check out our Light Body Essentials program. It's 3 meetings a month, and there's opportunities for more stuff in between. This is really a beautiful, beautiful work of art. Originally envisioned by me, but it's actually executed by the other Starshines in our group, like Laurel, who's an amazing facilitator, such a beautiful connection with the elemental world, and Stacy Hernandez, who does amazing work. She's an excellent tracker and works with ancestral stuff and other kinds of we'll just say multidimensional realization of self. And then of course, I do those quantum activations. So it's a really, really cool thing to be a part of. You get to track in groups, experience each other in really cool ways. That's on our website, lightbodyacademy.com. And then let's see, there is there was something else I wanted to put in there. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, it left my brain. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for being a part of this conversation. I'm going to go ahead and read this last thing, and then we're wrapping up. So let's go into, there we go. A very recent experience for me has been ready in my writing journal. So glad I did this, because I can now have so much compassion for all the work most others would not be able to comprehend. Yes. And actually that speaks to the NPC thing. The more we do our work, the more opportunities we're making for others to wake up to ourselves. So we make the likelihood of the NPC phenomenon be less and less and less and less and less. The more we do, the more we make beauty that is true to our nature. Thank you for that. All right, darlings. Thank you for being here. I'll see you guys next week. If there's something that you want me to talk about, I encourage you guys to send us an email at wecare@lightbodyacademy.com, and then that will get sent to me, and I'll be able to talk about it and just bring that liberated perspective. Be well, guys. All the best.